Okay, so we'll start from the very beginning.
Okay. So my name is Jacob Cherian, and I have done my MSc in Jadavpur University and PhD in experimental high energy physics in a collaborative program with Tata Institute of Fundamental Research and Jadavpur University. So I would like to share some of my best memories in college. And I normally in the inauguration ceremony, I start off with the example of Margaret Mead, where she says, "When did society begin?" And she asks these questions to the students, shows so many artifacts, paintings, and things like that. And the question is, what do you think is the beginning of society? And in one corner of the room is a lone pieces of bone lying there. And when all the students picks up pottery, painting, achievements, then she says, picking up this tiny femur bone, this is the beginning of society. The students are naturally confused. How can a bone have anything to do with society? And as the students look at the bone carefully, they find that there is a layer of cicatrix, which means the bone had healed. It shows a fracture that is healed, and they tell Professor Mead that we can't figure out. And then she explains to them this meant that a person could rest while the bone healed, and therefore that was the beginning of society. So we share this with our students about the beginning of society and to remember that this is what society is all about. One of my early memories are about the Social Service League, and I remember one blind student came to see me. She was very, very upset. She was visually challenged and she couldn't prepare well for her exams, and she was afraid she'll fail her exams, and she seemed extremely depressed and worried. And I was naturally worried, how do you help? Keeping in mind the words of Professor Margaret Mead, it was necessary to help her. And then a thought occurred to me to take her for the seminar. So we called 2 or 3 other students. Everybody was very happy. We went for the seminar, and the main speaker of the seminar was a young man who was deaf, dumb, and blind. And he gave a wonderful speech. My earlier students would ask me, how did he speak? But I'm sure now you would have figured out how they spoke. And he gave this wonderful speech about how the Don Bosco Institute had developed him, and now he'd become a teacher in computer science. This young lady from our college and this young man who gave this wonderful speech, we made both of them sit together and talk. I introduced them to each other, and they chatted for approximately 3 long hours. And after the talk, I told her it was time to go back to the hostel, otherwise she would get thrown out from the residence. And on the way back, I asked her how she felt, and over again she kept repeating, "Nothing is wrong with me, nothing is wrong with me." And to my intense astonishment, I realized that this young man, who was supposedly deaf, dumb, and blind, had done in 3 hours what I couldn't achieve with her in 3 months. He had encouraged her so much, and sometimes we find that interacting with people whom we think not fruitful gives us some of the greatest joys in life. And I share that with my students about how it is very, very necessary to be available. And this, I said, is one of the greatest hallmarks of the college. I've been in the college for around 30 years, from a teacher in charge of social service, in charge of electronic society, in charge of other things, and vice principal for a couple of years, principal for a full year, and the head of the department for many years. And during this period, I found some very interesting episodes. One was the student who called me at 11:30 at night. He calls me at 11:30 of night. Those days mobiles were not there. I said hello to him, and he put down the phone. I was very surprised. Why would anybody call me at 11:30 at night and put down the phone when I say hello? And to my intense astonishment, he was there knocking at my door 40 minutes later. I asked him, what brings you here? He was also visually challenged and he said, your hellos sounded very worried. I felt a little disturbed because you sounded very worried and I thought I should immediately come over to see what's happening. Now I was totally touched. I never knew that my voice was so clear and carried my emotions so well. So the name of the student is Bharat, and many other episodes. There have been episodes of teachers helping students who wanted to do suicide, jumping in through a ventilator, getting called in a police station because a student was caught with drugs. And many of these episodes show the love and affection between teachers and students. And in the last thing, I want to share the example which Paul Brand uses about the onset of leprosy. Dr. Paul Brand, who was a doctor with the Leprosy Mission of India, talks about how he would be happy when somebody comes to him limping. He said when a leprosy patient comes limping, it means there is life in his legs, life in his body. The rule of nature, the rule of a body is one part takes on the weight when the other part is not strong enough. It is the joy of helping the weaker part regain its strength. And he says, Paul Brand says, when I see a leper walking equally on both legs, then I am scared because that means death is slowly creeping in the body. It is my aspiration that death doesn't creep in into our college. That we as students, we as teachers, we as staff and students continue to help each other to grow and become stronger day by day.
So two more things that we'd like to cover is how do you think the college is different from the time you joined and what it is now? And also, where do you see the college in the next 10 years in the future? And what plans do you have? What your visions are?
What am I?
What your vision for the college is?
So what is the difference in what I have seen in the college in 30 years? I once again feel that students were more relaxed. Maybe it's to do with the semester system and the annual system, or maybe it's just society at large. But I found they were a little more relaxed and the societal instinct was much higher. You had less people behaving alone. I remember it being often said that the dolphins are the first sign of society because they go around in a group. So we find over here the identity of the institution being very realistic to many students. I remember one of our physics teachers getting cancer and the whole department used to help him with his classes. His practical, somebody would tell him to rest. I remember coming and telling the class the news that he is coming back today after recovering from his cancer surgery, and the whole class jumping in joy. So today there is a little more isolation. Maybe it's the media, maybe it's WhatsApp. People spend more time with their mobile. People are reluctant to share their problems with others. And people are more liable to be depressed. Those days there was less of depression. Even if the teacher scolded them, they would all laugh together. Today that is rare. Today depression is higher. Today you have to take as a teacher students for medical help in depression. Anxiolytics are more common, and this is one thing that is a bit sad. And the thing I need for the college to improve is there should be a more positive social action, more positive social interaction. Sometimes it is possible for one society to try and go up by putting somebody else down. That one has to be very, very careful that you go up by yourself, you don't go up by putting others down. and we need to grow up together. As we talked about real growing, it's when we grow up together. And I remember one of the early years when the college got a huge number of students clearing the IAS exams, the UPSC civil service exams, and we realized that all they had worked together. Sometimes today people tend to work in isolation and not working together. It's the group who walks together that walks furthest. I just want to share these thoughts with you all.
That's it, unless there's anything else you want to
No,
say.
I think that's enough.